Welcome to Pinnacle of Awesome, Buddhism Basics. I'm your host, Pema Shamsetso, and I'm here to help you learn about the fundamentals of Buddhism. So whether you're a new practitioner, a longtime Buddhist, or just someone looking to be happier, this podcast is for you. This course will be a 6-week course on the first teaching of Buddha Shakyamuni as a fully realized result Buddha. If you are unsure what I mean when I say result Buddha, you can go back and look at my second course on the objects of refuge, the first teaching, which is the teaching on Buddha, and that will tell you about the 3 types of Buddha. The first teaching of Buddha Shakyamuni are the 4 Noble Truths, also known as the 4 Noble Truths of the Enlightened. The 4 Noble Truths are the basis point for all transcendent knowledge, so they are incredibly important. I could spend an entire year talking on the 4 Noble Truths and still have room for more, but I'm going to try to condense it down into 6 weeks. In this teaching, I'll be giving an overview about what the next 5 teachings will look like. I will also give a little bit of history on Buddha Shakyamuni's path to enlightenment and also on the first teaching of the 4 Noble Truths in this world. Following that, I will introduce you to the text that I will be using as a reference throughout this course. It's a compilation of the pith instructions of many different sutras, and I will explain why I'm using it, and I will also explain why it's important for us to have in our daily lives. In addition to that, I'll also give you all a link so you can have access to it and follow along throughout the course, and you can print it out at home if you want and keep it with you. And as always, at the end, I'll give you a little bit of homework to help kick off your contemplation so that you really get the most of these teachings. So without further delay, let's get into it. The story of Buddha Shakyamuni is an incredibly astounding tale, and a lot of that feeling can be lost when we tell it in modern days. A lot of it is contextual. Everything that Buddha Shakyamuni did in his final lifetime was strategic. He chose the family that he was going to be born into, the Shakya clan, because it was the most powerful and influential family. They had the most money and the most resources. At that time, you had the most credibility if you were incredibly wealthy and incredibly powerful, like the Shakya clan, like a king of an empire. Or you were incredibly well-known and renowned if you were a very accomplished ascetic. I'll go into asceticism later when we talk about that portion of Buddha Shakyamuni's life. So when Buddha Shakyamuni was born, he chose the family that he was going to be born into, specifically so that he could demonstrate that that was not a path of happiness. When Buddha Shakyamuni was born into this world as Prince Siddhartha, Buddha Shakyamuni was a 10th Bhumi Bodhisattva, which is almost Buddha. If you want more information on his past lives, you can look at the Sutra of the Wise and Foolish. I know that there are other sutras out there, and they tell some amazing stories of Buddha Shakyamuni's past lives as an enlightened bodhisattva. He was born to the most powerful family with the most wealth, and when he was born, he looked around and raised his finger and said, "In this universe, I am supreme." Because at that time, in that universe, in that world, no one had his level of enlightenment. So he spent the next 29 years in the palace, mastering everything that the palace had to offer. He became the most accomplished scholar. In addition to mastering all of this knowledge of medicine, of linguistics, of any kind of book knowledge you can think of, he also mastered martial arts and sports and physical prowess. So he was the most powerful as the prince of the Shakya kingdom. He had all of the beautiful wives that he could want for. He had all worldly pleasure, and he had all worldly accomplishment. And right at the height of that power, he had just had a son, beautiful wife. That was when he decided, when he chose to leave the palace, which was shocking at that time. And that was why he did it. When someone has everything and gives it up, a lot of people think, what kind of nutjob would do that? And in that question, there's a curiosity that's piqued. When Buddha Shakyamuni left the palace, 5 of his childhood companions left with him. They were Kondinya, Ashvajit, Mahanama, Vashpa, and Bhadrika, and they would later become known as the first 5 excellent students of the Buddha. So Buddha Shakyamuni left this life of opulence to follow the path of the ascetics, which at the time in India was incredibly popular. If you didn't have all worldly possessions, you could still be powerful by being a very accomplished ascetic. Asceticism is where you neglect your body in certain ways, and at the time it was a way to impress the gods. So Buddha Shakyamuni, along with his 5 childhood companions, set out to find ascetic masters to learn how to become very accomplished in all of these practices, because it requires a lot of mental strength in order to neglect your body in these certain ways. And every single master that they visited, Buddha Shakyamuni would learn from them and then very quickly surpass them in skill. This went on for about 6 years. First, Buddha Shakyamuni became so accomplished that he didn't need to eat. And then he got to the stage where he didn't even drink water. And at the very end, he didn't even breathe. He was so accomplished at this path that he looked like a corpse. You could see his spine through his stomach. And at this time, everyone was shocked and awed and revered him as this incredibly accomplished ascetic master. Like, you've reached it, you've done it. This is why you left the palace, was to reach this level of accomplishment. This is what you wanted. And again, right at the height of his popularity, when he reached the pinnacle of what asceticism could do, of how you could master yourself to the point where you could still continue to live without eating, drinking, or breathing, he accepted the offering of milk from a girl, which was the most scandalous at the time. Not only did he accept this offering of milk and break the ascetic practice that he had spent 6 years perfecting and mastering, but he did it from a girl, which was outrageously scandalous. Because at the time, one of the things you also abstained from was any sort of contact. And so his 5 childhood companions felt betrayed by this and got up and left and just abandoned him. He went to go sit down in the Bodhi tree for his final session so that he could demonstrate and show to the world him becoming Buddha. But his friends didn't care. They were so hurt by this betrayal that they just left. There are a bunch of other really cool things that happen when Buddha Shakyamuni sits down for his final his final practice session under the Bodhi tree. He defeats the Maras. There's just a lot of really wonderful and beautiful stories there, but I don't have a whole ton of time, so I'll kind of skip a bit. After Buddha demonstrated that asceticism wasn't the path, his 5 childhood friends went to Varanasi to kind of figure out, where do we go from here? We're not following the prince anymore because he left this life of opulence and he even left the path of asceticism. So what is there that's left for us? And they were so hurt and betrayed that they started talking among themselves, that saying, if he comes back, we won't do anything for him. We won't make him a cushion. We won't make him any tea. We won't even prostrate to him. Prostrating is out of the question. All of this is out of the question. We will just pretend like he isn't there. After Buddha attained perfect enlightenment, he had this halo of light. You could see it from miles away. There's another beautiful story wherein the 2 most prominent gods, Brahma and Indra, are making all these offerings to Buddha, asking him to teach. And after a long time of them requesting, it's not until they give up their most valuable possessions and offer those that he finally agrees to teach. And he doesn't teach there. He accepts the offerings and says, okay, I'm ready to teach. And then he gets up and walks to Varanasi, because that's where his childhood friends are. And he wants them to hear these teachings first. As he's arriving to Varanasi, you can see him coming from miles away because of this radiant light that Buddha is emitting. And there's words traveling like, oh, Siddhartha, that old prince Siddhartha, he's coming up to Varanasi and he's going to teach, and something happened under the Bodhi tree and it's really impressive. And his 5 childhood friends are gathered together and they're saying to themselves, trying to psych themselves up, like, no, he's coming, but we're not going We're not going to offer him anything. We're not going to make him a cushion. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to pretend that he doesn't exist, all right? All right. And as he gets closer, their resolve weakens and weakens and weakens until he gets close and they make a cushion for him and they offer him tea and they prostrate to him and he sits down and they beg him, all right, Buddha Shakyamuni, please, please give us teachings. We don't know what happened. Please teach us. This is where the Four Noble Truths are taught. At this point, Buddha says to them, this is the truth of the enlightened regarding suffering. And at that point, Kundinya gets it, and he becomes enlightened. The other four haven't quite gotten it yet, so the Buddha continues. This is the truth of the enlightened regarding causes. This is the truth of the enlightened regarding cessation. This is the truth of the enlightened regarding the paths. At which point, they all become enlightened. They get it because of all of their practice in this lifetime and in previous lifetimes. And those 5 become the first 5 enlightened arhats. But this teaching wasn't just for his 5 childhood companions. This teaching was so important that for the next 6 years and 10 months, Buddha mainly taught the Four Noble Truths. People would come from all around and ask questions of Buddha Shakyamuni, and he answered them through the Four Noble Truths. Prideful people came and asked for advanced teachings from the supreme scholar Buddha Shakyamuni, so he taught them elaborate Four Noble Truths. Simple people came and asked the compassionate Buddha Shakyamuni for simple teachings that they could hold on to that would get them to enlightenment that didn't require them to think a lot. So Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths. People came and asked how to offer to the gods, so Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths. They came to ask how to solve family conflicts, so Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths. Every question that was asked could be answered through the Four Noble Truths, because it is the foundation of all transcendent knowledge. Buddha Shakyamuni answered all of these different types of questions through the Four Noble Truths because it is such a widely applicable teaching. The Four Noble Truths is meant to reach us where we're at as sentient beings. We suffer a lot, and we don't want to suffer, but we don't know why we suffer. There's inconsistencies, and we can't seem to find why we suffer. We don't know what happiness really is, and we don't know how to get it, but we want it desperately. And these 4 questions are the 4 questions that are answered by the Four Noble Truths. What is suffering? This is the truth of the enlightened regarding suffering. What causes suffering? This is the truth of the enlightened regarding causes. What is happiness? This is the truth of the enlightened regarding cessation. How do we get happiness? This is the truth of the enlightened regarding the paths. This is where I'm going to introduce to you the text that I will be using. It's called How to Knowingly Practice the Four Noble Truths of the Enlightened, the First Teaching of Buddha, and it is a text that is compiled by His Eminence Dzogchen Khenpo Chogo Rinpoche. It was printed out in pamphlet form, and if you have one of those, great. If you don't, it can be found online at thebuddhapath.org, thebuddhapath.org, no spaces. If you scroll to the bottom of the page, in the center there will be a link to the Four Noble Truths, and there's a text there. The reason that I am using this particular text is because it is tailored for a modern Dharma practitioner. I don't know Tibetan, and I don't know Sanskrit. His Eminence Dzogchen Khenpo Chogo Rinpoche is a prolific scholar. Not only does he read an incredible number of books, but he rereads them and has a deep understanding of the text that he reads. He contemplates a lot and makes connections between them. I don't have access to the sutras and tantras because my Mandarin is subpar and I don't know Tibetan and I don't know Sanskrit. But Khenpo Chogo Rinpoche does know and reads them a lot. And what he's done is he's taken the summary and the pith of a bunch of different sutras regarding the Four Noble Truths, including the Sutra of the Four Noble Truths, and distilled it into this text that we can carry with us, we can hold, we can memorize very easily. and has tested it. He's asked his students to test it and to figure out whether or not it works. And we have. So when I use this text, I use it because it is the most straightforward. It is the easiest to teach from, and it's the easiest to learn. Every line in this particular text is like a handle that helps you hold the ocean of wisdom that is Buddha's teachings. One of the reasons why I'm using this text as opposed to a straight sutra text is because I don't have enough knowledge to verify the quality of translation. I have been present during some translation sessions with Khenpo Chogyam Rinpoche, and I see how difficult it is to translate a text well. And with a lot of these sutras, it can be really easy to get some words wrong and just change the entire meaning. With this root text, I trust it. I've practiced it, I've seen other people practice it, and I've used it in my life. So I know it's good, and I can attest to it. The other thing to note is that the sutras are what Buddha taught, so you have to take into consideration the context around each of those teachings. What Buddha taught to a group of monastics versus what Buddha would teach to a group of lay people are very different. What Buddha would teach to people in a certain area would be different versus another area, because each area and each group, each demographic has its own unique issues that need to be addressed and also have its own unique strengths that would be bolstered. As fast-moving, technological people, we need something that we can carry with us at all times, that we can put on our phone, that we can keep in our pocket, that we can carry with us on the train, on the metro, that we can listen to in the car. And that's what this is compiled to do. So the next lectures are going to look like this. The next 4 teachings are going to be on each of the Noble Truths respectively, the first, the second, the third, and the fourth. And then the final teaching, the 6th teaching, will be on how we apply all of these. Your homework for this class is to read through the root text about 3 times. It doesn't take that long, anywhere between 3 and 6 minutes per reading, depending on how quickly you read. I also want you to ask yourself these 4 questions. What do I think suffering is? Why do I think I suffer? What do I think happiness is? And how do I think I get that? The most important thing I want you to do is actually after you ask yourself these questions, which is I want you to look at the answers that you have given, and I want you to ask yourself about these answers. Is this always true for me? Has it always been true for me? And is it true for everyone? So like a really simple example would be, what do I think suffering is? You could say, well, I personally don't like the heat, so I think suffering is being really hot. Now, why do I suffer? Well, because I'm hot. Do I always suffer when I'm hot, though? And I can think, oh yeah, I'm totally always suffering when I'm hot. But when it's really cold and I have a hot shower, I love that. And in that moment, I think that heat and hot and being hot is happiness. So when we look at this example, what we see is that being hot isn't always suffering for us. It's not always suffering for me. Sometimes I view it as happiness. On the flip side, I can look at things that I think are really happiness, like ice cream, for example. I love ice cream, and I always love ice cream when I eat ice cream. Therefore, ice cream is the cause of my happiness. But if I eat a lot of ice cream, like tubs and tubs and tubs of ice cream, and I get a stomach ache, then all of a sudden I start viewing ice cream as the cause of my suffering. And therefore, ice cream also isn't the cause of my happiness. I want you to look at all of the things that you think are happiness and look and see, is it always true? And is it always true for you and for everyone? And that will just kind of get you thinking about what really is happiness and what really is suffering. The next teaching will be on the first noble truth, the truth regarding suffering. If you have any questions or want to share your experiences, you can email me at pinnacleofawesome@gmail.com. That's pinnacleofawesome@gmail.com. May these teachings benefit you as much as they've benefited me. May we use these teachings to decrease our anger, jealousy, greed, pride, and ignorance. May we use these teachings to increase our renunciation, compassion, faith, love, and wisdom. May we be better people tomorrow than we are today.